So I didn't realize you said that you did insurance as an adjuster as well.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's kind of where my career journey started. Is I was, and this is why I was so interested to come on this podcast. I mean, insurance related things are still very much in my wheelhouse. I spent 13 years as a water and fire damage restoration contractor.
Right.
And towards the end of it, I was part owner in that company, and I spent the majority of my time writing estimates. After I left that company, I did about a 4-year stint as a insurance property claims adjuster.
Oh, okay.
And it was fascinating. And I found that one of the advantages I had is, I came out of being a contractor. And as an adjuster, I went from being the guy who's on the other side of the check trying to get to the check and complete the job to get paid. I went from that guy to being the guy with the checkbook,
right? Yeah.
Looking at the policy and, keeping promises that agents have made. And
right.
I was in a unique position to understand both sides.
Right.
I learned policy. I understood how to, sort through the ins and outs of what's covered and what's not, and find ways to help folks whenever I possibly could, which was the overwhelming time.
Yep.
The overwhelming amount of the time, I was really able to be the hero and, provide that value and keep promises. And it was great. But I also had an interesting knowledge of, as a contractor, what do these guys actually need to do the job? Mm-hmm. I knew very intimately what they needed.
You knew it was BS.
Oh, yes. I had a really great sense for it.
Oh, man. Yeah, because that would be the challenging, definitely give you a leg up as being an adjuster, because that is the challenging part. There's people, and I've been doing insurance now 20 years, so it definitely start to see, the BS detector's gotten a little bit better over the years. And so I can sense when there's certain contractors. When we had that flood in 2021 in Whatcom County, it was massive. And there was a shortage of contractors, water restoration contractors. And there were people that were coming into the county from out of the area. And some of the stuff that they were doing, I was like, this is almost criminal.
Yeah.
Right? Like
totally.
They're definitely taking these people for a ride. Because here I am sitting in my house. I had, a foot of water in my house. I'm devastated. I don't have any place. I'm staying at a friend's house. I don't have my house. My stuff was ruined. And this contractor comes in and is like, hey, we can fix it. And they get you to sign a bunch of stuff. And then they start tearing stuff apart. And then we had this happen a couple of times. And then the bids are coming back and the bills are coming in. And the adjusters are like, no, you're overcharging. And we're not going to pay this. And the customer now is stuck in this part where they're like, well, my house is torn apart. I need to get it fixed. And this guy's fixing it. And the adjuster's like, yeah, but he's charging you double what everybody else is charging. And you're as the homeowner, you're stuck on the hook. You signed the contract. Mm-hmm. You gave him a blank check to just start working on your house sometimes. There's bad contractors out there, and being able to be the adjuster that knows the contracting world would have been a huge thing.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I enjoyed that job so much because it really hit the sweet spot of kind of to be a great adjuster. I think you ultimately need to be a great mediator. Mm-hmm. And you need to be able to have great customer service skills to serve the client, but also be able to build a bridge, between, I've always looked at claims as it's a triangle. I've used this illustration a lot. And when things go great, it's a perfect equilateral triangle of the client, the adjuster or carrier, the adjuster being the main rep of the carrier, and the contractor. And when all sides are equal, things go great. When things get widely askew, where sometimes you have, a client and the adjuster, there's very clear communication of what the expectations are, but the contractor's way out there.
Right.
It gets very acute or obtuse, that triangle, and it gets out of whack and things get tricky. Sometimes there's, I've had other situations where it's like, man, is this contractor like your cousin? Cause like, it seems like you guys are like conspiring to like do some wild stuff that's like not normal. So, and you have to build a bridge to, equal out that triangle as much as possible and bring everybody into alignment. That's how I always tried to look at it.
So what took you from the fire restoration company to being an adjuster?
Yeah. I think I was ready for a change. Being in a company where ultimately the end of it, the majority of the time, I worked my way through every possible hat you could wear in that company, including being the guy who's in there doing the demo, doing the dry out, and doing the rebuild at the end and managing subs. But by the end of it, the majority of my time was spent doing marketing and writing the estimates. And I found that's what I love the most, is writing those estimates and optimizing. Here's what it's going to take to put this back together, doing it quickly and getting efficient, reaching an accord with the adjusters, and developed some great relationships with adjusters, and thought like, I can maybe do that someday. And yeah, so it was a really great transition. And what it allowed me to do as I went from, the analogy I always looked at was like, I went from being like a shotgun. I was doing a lot of things in the company, really great spread, short effective range. I went from being a shotgun to just a laser. I was focused. I had one particular job, and that was, closing claims, writing estimates, communicating, and just paying what we owe. It was wildly different going from a small business to being in a corporate environment. You're a cog in a very massive machine. And the advantage to that is you get to be hyper focused in what your job is and what you get to be really, really focused and good at. And I really enjoyed that. It was cool. It was totally different though. Totally different world.
So what took you then? So you went from shotgun, laser, and now you're kind of broad again.
Yes.
Why did you go from that into engineering?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned in the main show, like about that time when Aaron started Axe Engineering, I think that's getting close to the time where I was trying to figure out what else I was going to do instead, and I became an adjuster. And I was always watching his business grow, and I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like, and then meanwhile, I went away from the small business and into corporate structure, and I think I had an opportunity. His company grew enough to where he needed help, and I think I was ready to get back into that small business mindset where, because when you're in a larger company in a corporate structure, it feels you're subject to what's coming down from above. Not a lot of opportunity to make decisions where you see opportunities for improvement. Unfortunately, you're one voice of many, and it's harder to make changes. I guess the adage that I would always come back to in business is the bigger the ship, the slower the turn. Right?
Yeah.
But in a small business, especially one as small as Axe, that's been growing the way it has, there's a lot of opportunity to be agile and make decisions quickly that you can literally see overnight. And that's always appealed to me. Growing business has always been interesting. I'm very happy to have done both sides of it. It's been very interesting. But yeah, I'm most certainly back to being a little more broad. And working in a small business as opposed to a corporate environment. And there's advantage to that too. I have probably more agency with my time than I think I've had in a very long time. It's been good. And I get to focus on spending time with my family and just pursuing the other things I enjoy to do.
Yeah, I think that is a huge challenge in corporate versus small business. Is in corporate there are perks, right? You can get pension plans or 401k plans and healthcare, and some of the small businesses can offer some comparable things, but definitely the size and magnitude of what those things can be is bigger in a corporate setting, and you get to be focused on just one thing in a corporate setting. But you also, like you said, you also are just one piece of this huge machine, and I think it can be. It could be, some people like that, right? Some people like that idea. Like, I just go to work, I do my thing, and I go home, and that's it. And I accept that it's outside of my control, and it is what it is, and you just move on. Whereas in the small businesses, you have more opportunity to say, I can make it better.
Yes.
I see something that doesn't work and I can say, hey, let's change this and let's make this better.
Yeah. And it's trade-offs. There's always trade-offs, you know, it's, I've been really fortunate to find that I can do either and thrive in both. And that's good to know. I don't think I could have had that awareness unless I had done that and had a taste of both in, you know, my professional experience. And it was good to know, you know, like I dealt very well with having, a direct supervisor. When I was, you know, as an adjuster, I did really well. I always thought like, if I ever went into the military, like, man, I'd be a good soldier. Like, I'm just okay. I'm okay with having like a lieutenant or a sergeant barking orders at me. I'm good.
Yeah, I can do it. You tell me.
I can totally do it.
I'll run through that wall for you.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can do it. And now I know that about myself. It's great. But I also know that, you know, being my own boss is great too. And I'm able to have the accountability to be able to be a self-starter. It's not always easy.
Yeah.
But
which is pretty unique actually, because I think there's a lot of people who don't have the ability to do both.
Sure.
I think there are people who are self-starters, entrepreneurs, and they could not have somebody telling them what to do and how to do it and when to do it.
That's for sure.
Right? Like
we've all met those folks.
Right. Like they're going to tell you where to go and how to get there if you tried to tell them what to do.
Oh, sure.
And then there's also people who cannot be self-motivated, right? They need somebody to say, if you're 10 minutes late, you're getting written up. And that if you don't do X, Y, Z, you're going to you lose your job. And that fear factor, if you will, or just the direction, having someone direct them to say, this is what you do, and this is how you do it, and this is when you do it. Like they couldn't do it on their own.
Totally. And they thrive in having that umbrella over them and the direction. They really thrive in that.
That's what they look for and they want. Quick question, because before we move on to the next question, I want to ask you, but backwards, as an adjuster, because you said like, hey, I see where their waste was or whatever. Was your job to not pay claims?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Because that's what people think.
Yeah, I know it. And that was the most interesting part of the job was, and I remember this became very clear when I was freshly an adjuster. I went through all my training and I went on my first couple claims and, you know, popped into those first couple jobs and was like, hey, how are you? And like was met with kind of a cold, like, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. Like, I don't know how I'm doing yet. Like, how is this going to go? And I found clients where there was an expectation of a fight, an adversarial sort of negotiation. And I got over that pretty quick because I realized like that's a position that for whatever reason, most folks are operating from. They've heard that the adjuster's job is to nickel and dime you down to the lowest possible offer. And that's not the case at all. Truthfully, the best adjusters understand that their job is to pay what is owed.
Right.
You know, and that comes through a combination of a lot of different things, but it's primarily understanding the policy, you know, understanding the constraints of what you are required to pay, first of all, what is, and what's in line with industry standards. And man, that's the thing that, again, back to math folks, and have that mind, the insurance industry has so much data available. And, you know, from everybody from actuaries to the amount of, you know, it can predict, you know, how much money should be socked away for what, you know, all of it. I find it absolutely fascinating that it's fascinating that it's such a data-driven industry. But on the other side of it, we have so much data to show that like our estimating software was just phenomenal. You know, I mean, I could walk into a job and, you know, with my experience coupled with really excellent estimating software, you know, put a number out there and have 3, sometimes 4 other contractors independently verify with bids. Like that's right in the bucket. Yeah,
it does. I know it is. We had, I had a customer that, because we use, as the agent level, we use the software to calculate how much you should have your building insured for, right?
That's right. Yes.
And so I had a customer and he thought I was trying to, you know, sell him a line. I was like, you're over insuring this. I don't need this much insurance. And I was like, I was like, this is pretty accurate. And so it was a hotel, and his dad was one of the owners, the founding owner of a big contracting company locally, who has built several hotels. And he's like, well, I'm going to call my dad's company, and and I was like, that'd be great if he comes back and gives us something different, I'll change it. And so he took my estimate that I built out through our software, took it to the estimator at his dad's company, and they spent about 2 weeks building an estimate to rebuild that hotel. And they came back $5,000 different than mine.
Wow.
And I was like, when you're talking millions of dollars of coverage, $5,000 is pretty good.
That's a bullseye.
Yeah. And,
I mean, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. And as a matter of fact, the estimator came back and he's like, we should just use this.
Right.
Because it was so close. So it is like the amount of data that insurance companies are data companies. That's really, I think you hit that. Is the amount of data that they use, the amount of data that they have is insane, because they can predict. We talked about this in a previous show about the whole LA wildfires.
Palisades? Yeah, I listened to that. It was very good.
Yeah. And that's, the insurance companies were the canaries in the coal mines there, right? Because they saw the data that was showing about the management, the forest management, the water issues, and all of that other stuff. They could see this is an issue. And so there's a lot of data that drives behind insurance companies.